Hi everyone, my name's Pan and welcome to another edition of Bluebird Corner, the Cardiff City Fans podcast. If you do subscribe in the month of July, you will be in a draw for a £250 gift card, which we'll draw at the end of July. Thanks for everyone who's viewed the podcast and subscribed. We've had 15,000 views already in just under a month, which is fantastic. So thanks for all your support. So as some of you may know, we do a podcast on a Tuesday about a previous season for City. And this week, we're now on the 1985-86 season. So how these run is we just sort of do a recap, what happened pre-season and the season before. We run through players who might have left or new players who've come in. And then obviously we run through the season, who the top goal scorer is, the average attendance, where we finish in the league, and we bring the league table up. So we'll start with the ownership of the club. So obviously the season before, we were in the old League One, which was Division 3. And it was the first time in our history we were relegated to Division 4. And the season before that, we were relegated again. So we were really in a pretty bad period for Cardiff City Football Club. Bearing in mind, many years ago, we've been in the old Premier League, FA Cup finals, a couple of times, nearly won what was the old First Division, missed out on goal difference. So, this period in the mid-80s was one of our worst. We sort of, Tony Clemo was on the board from 1973, and Tony, who owned Red Dragon Travel, for those who might remember, a very successful businessman, very good athlete, a good friend of Lynn Davis, and I think he had Ron. I think Ron Davis was a famous runner as well. He was appointed to the board in the early 80s. But Tony, who also owned Tito's nightclub, some of you might remember, in Cardiff, he appointed Frank Burrows as manager for the 1985-86 season. And Frank, a tough Scot who was at Portsmouth, and I think he was assistant manager at Sunderland before coming to Cardiff City. So that was an important signing for City. And Jimmy Goodfellow went back to being a physio. He was in temporary charge in the season before, and he went back to being an assistant manager as well. And Bobby Smith took over the reserve and the youth team. So a few players actually left the club because obviously there needed to be a clear out. So City got rid of Derek Christie. Jimmy Mullen actually went to Newport County as player manager. Jay King retired. And then Paul McLaughlin, Taki Micklef, Kevin Peacock, Chris Sander, Alan Price, Tim O'Connor, they all leave the club in the summer. And Lee Smelt resigns as goalkeeper and youth coach. So a number of players came in. First, we had Steve Sherlock. Steve, age 66, born in Birmingham. He came from Stockport County, and he played 15 games for City, and he ended his career in non-league. Then you've got Alan Curtis, now age 71, from Pentra in the Rhondda. Alan was a wing forward. He he was released by Southampton before coming to City. He played 125 games for Cardiff City, and he scored 10 goals. And Alan Curtis, as much as he did have a very successful career with the Jacks previously, he was well liked at Cardiff City. He was a very good player. I know he was come to us in the latter part of his career, but his skills and ability were way above some of the players he was up against in this league. Then you've got Alan Rogers, age 70. He's born in Plymouth. We signed him from Southend. He played 27 games for City, scoring 1 goal, and he had a very successful career at Portsmouth. Then you've got Graham Mosley, the goalkeeper. Graham is now age 71, born in Manchester. we signed him from Brighton, and some fans remember Graham Mosley was the goalkeeper of Brighton in the 1983 Cup final. And he played 38 games for City. And he was well liked by City fans. I remember Graham Mosley, really liked him. We had a good chant on the terraces for Graham. Unfortunately, he had a serious car accident, and he had to retire at age 33. Then you've got tough central defender Terry Boyle. We signed him from Newport. Now, all these signings coming in were free transfers. As you know, in the 80s, we didn't have much money. But Terry came in for 22 grand from Newport County. And born in Amford, as I said, central defender, started his career at Spurs and ended his career at Bangor, and later went on to work for the FA Trust. And we also brought in 2 trialists. One of those players was Paul Wimbledon. Now, Paul, the long blonde-haired central midfielder who was ex-Portsmouth, he was released by them, and he actually went on to play 119 games for City, scoring 17 times. He was a hard-working midfielder, tenacious, really. And I always remember Paul when in the 80s when I used to go out. I used to go out when I was 15 to Cardiff on a night out down St Mary Street, and I always remember him in a club called Poonar Nars, and he used to be in there with always have a couple of girls next to him, a couple of pretty girls. And he later went on to, I think he's still doing it now. He was running a successful academy in New Jersey. And also Andy Kerr came in. Andy Kerr, 59, from born in West Brom, defender. He came in from Shrewsbury, and he played 31 times for City, scoring 1 goal. So, as regards to the beginning of the season, obviously Frank brought in a number of players, and we start the season with a 1-1 draw at Hartlepool. And then, City actually, up to October, just lose one game at Tranmere 2-0. But of that run in the early part of the season, 5 of those games are a draw. And, it's the lack of goals, really. Even early on, you could tell we were lacking goal scorers. So Frank, obviously he was looking around for strikers, but one of our first signings going into a few games this season was Nicky Plattner, the blonde-headed left-sided player. He played left midfield, but also had a very successful spell for City as a left back. He came in, and by the time we visited Wrexham, we were in 9th position, which wasn't too bad. We hadn't lost many games, but as I said, we had a number of draws in the early part of the season. We lost at Wrexham 5-1, and then went on to lose our next game at Colchester 3-1. So in early October, Frank signed a player Cardiff City fans know, Kevin Bartlett, who was signed from non-league Fareham Town, the striker. And also Burrows got in Chris Pike, who's the uncle, obviously, of Gareth Bale. He came in from Fulham on loan. So City did pick up, some points. They actually won against Cambridge, Aldershot and Burnley. And City were back in 9th at this point, but inconsistency came back. And, we didn't win any of our next 6, including a 2-0 home defeat against Wolverhampton Wanderers. City then go on and win their next 2 games, but again, the inconsistency comes back, and they only win 1 of their next 9, including a Boxing Day draw at home to the Jacks in front of 11,500 fans. And during this rough period of time, Jason Perry made his debut. I think he was 16 as a fullback. And we also brought in Steve Mardenborough. And Steve Mardenborough came in from Newport County as a winger. But things didn't really improve. I mean, we did beat Crewe 2-1. But again, inconsistency came in. And we only actually won 3 of our next 10 games. And City then sort of do win a couple of games, but, at that point, with a couple of games left of the season, City do win their last 2 games. And interestingly, one of those, the home game, the last home game of the season, was against Hartlepool. Now, when we actually played Hartlepool away, some City fans may remember there was a lot of trouble in and around the ground. And I think in a later match against Luton, I think it was in a cup, City fans were denied tickets for a match there due concerns the police had about fans going there. So that was the one away, but the one at home was also memorable for different reasons. In that it was a rearranged home game that actually ended up being played on a Thursday night, believe it or not. And City's attendance that day was the lowest league attendance ever. 1,510 fans who watched that game, including myself. I think we won it 4-1 or something. I think it's 4-1 or 4-0. So, yeah, that was a really low point, really. I suppose both games were low points for different reasons. So we ended the season in 13th place. And I suppose you could say we stopped the rot, because after dropping down 2 divisions in the last few seasons, we really needed to regroup. And to be fair, Frank Burrows did the best he could with little money again. Paul Wimbledon, released, was a trialist at the end of the day. He was our top goal scorer with 8 goals from the midfield, 4 of which were pens. Paul Wheeler came next with 7, and Nigel Vaughan got 6. And Nigel Vaughan started the season really well. I think in the first 12 or so league and cup games, he got 6 or 7 goals in total. But in terms of the league, he scored 6 goals. So yeah, you can see from that league table, we finished 13th. Our average attendance that season, bearing in mind we had 11,500 against the Jacks at home, was only 3,128. Really bad average attendance there. And from the league table, you can see that we were 1 point behind the Jacks. We only actually scored about 1 goal a game, which is really in line with what City did last season. And you can see there 15 wins, 15 defeats. So it was definitely a very middle of the road average season. Some famous-ish clubs in that division, as you can see. Wolves came 4th, Preston came 2nd, and Burnley were 22nd. How times have changed, and Burnley and Wolves are in the Premier League, and Preston are doing reasonably well in the Championship. So yes, it wasn't a great season all round. As I said, a number of players left, a number of players came in, and the most important signing for Cardiff City and Tony Clement there was Frank Burrows. So yes, that was the review for the 85-86 season. We're trying to sort of condense it really, but I hope it sort of brought back some memories there. As I said, bringing up the players, some old photos of players from the past. I think Kevin Bartlett was one a lot of City fans remember. And again, when we do other podcasts, his name comes up quite a bit. So, thanks very much for watching Bluebird Corner, and we shall see you soon. Take care.